Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who usually do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But it's the final week in 2023,
Yes.
and Laura's ready for this year to be over, guys.
Oh my gosh, friends, this is a bad year. So just getting into it a little bit, I had surgery a few weeks ago, and then I got COVID. And I'm like almost over the COVID, I feel like. And last night I threw my back out coughing. So that's how this month has been. It's bad.
Been a very bad month for Laura, so we're glad to watch it leave and discuss some better things.
Bring on 2024, but we are talking about things we did enjoy about 2023, and that's what we've read and watched.
Oh my gosh. And you guys, we finally get to talk about what we watched.
Yeah, it's been a long year.
Not much for Hannah, but Laura's been watching a ton of stuff that she's like had on lockdown. So
here's the thing. So you guys know that earlier this year, Hannah and I decided to not talk about things that we'd been watching just to support the strikes that were ongoing for months.
Yeah.
And luckily they came to a fair deal and they are back to work and everything. But because we are a podcast that focuses on media and we talk a lot about TV and movies, that cut out a lot of things for us to talk about.
Oh.
So now we're going to try our best to update you on what we've been watching, but chances are you're still going to hear a lot of it in 2024 because we're not going to remember everything that we've watched this year.
How could we? How could we? So
unless we start like an app similar to Goodreads where it's like you mark each show you watch.
I'm pretty sure that's just called Letterbox. Like that has TV
does that
shows
exist?
on it. Yeah, Letterbox. I mean, it's for at least movies. I don't know if Letterbox does TV, but there are certain apps where you can like log what you've watched, because I know some people do that where they'll like write down every single thing they watch or interact with each day, which like to me is insane because I'm like,
I mean, that's a lot, but I get it if people, especially in the context of like this podcast where you're trying to remember things that you've done, or if you're a blogger or something like that, can totally understand how that would be a useful app.
Right. But yeah, Laura's right. We're talking about a few of our favorite things this year.
The favorite things.
Wheel of Time show and something or other. Star Wars and Star Trek and maybe another.
Hey, good rhyming.
I know. I can really do things off the top of my head, guys.
If you ever need like a parody video and you can't get Weird Al, Hannah is the perfect person.
I did rewrite 2 songs for 2 of my sister's weddings at the request of the third sister because she was not as good as making the songs. So
are you going to be requesting a parody song for your wedding?
Probably not. I don't know if they will deliver one or not. I don't know. One sister does listen to this podcast, so maybe she'll be like, "Oh, Laura, that would be the surprise." But
interesting if that were to occur. I mean, I'm in the dark on this, so
yeah. Well,
it's
you're
not
in
like
the wedding,
it's a surprise.
So
it's not like
it'll
it's a
have
surprise.
I know. I mean, you're in the wedding, so just so people know, Laura's in my wedding. Like
I'm the person going live in the corner, the live our pod episode.
She's gonna be holding a microphone the entire time.
Yes.
But no, so and I also I made a little book for one of my nieces this year. I've made a couple of books for my nieces and nephews, and we had kept it a secret, or I had kept it a secret on this podcast because legitimately the mom of this niece listens to the pod and I didn't want to ruin it for her. But it turned out really cute. So I am very creative when it comes to songs and children's books and all that stuff. So, but Laura, can you start us off with one of your favorites of the year? Do you want to do like TV show, books? Do you want to mix it up?
Do we want to swap between, or how do you want to do it?
We can swap and just like name some stuff that we've just been enjoying, and we can just kind of go off a list. So,
all right. Well, I'm looking at my Goodreads right now, and I probably should just start where the year started and the books that I was obsessed with at the beginning of the year.
Well, okay, can we first say that like obviously you and I both adored Jade City and Martha Wells' Murderbot, and they hold like a very special place in our hearts. So can we say like those two are kind of give me like
well, I was gonna get there, but it's kind of one of those things where like talked in depth on
Right.
both of those series. And yeah, I don't know that we need to go into too much.
No,
On
I would say
those.
that like let's just get those two out of the gates because I'm looking at my Goodreads and it's just like Martha
Yeah.
Wells, Martha Wells, Martha Wells. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I feel like I just bought one of her my partner found one of her used books at Open Books in Chicago this weekend for like $10 and it's like a very expensive
Nice.
like 90s cover version of one of her fantasies and I bought it. So
Was it
like
City of
obviously
Bones?
no, I don't think so. I forget which one it was. I would have to go check, but I was really I was just
Okay.
like, oh, this is a really cool cover and it's like one of
Yeah.
her originals. So I bought it for $10.
Nice.
And so we obviously like both of those series. I think I
Mhm.
adored and you adored as well. So we can
Yeah,
kind of
I would say definitely highlights of our reading years were the Murderbot Diaries and the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee.
yeah.
So if you want to hear us gush and gush and gush about them, go back to our episodes where we covered those because we did a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of series that we covered, probably most of these books I have talked about in some form
I mean,
during the
yeah,
podcast, but
we had to talk about so many of these books because we weren't
yeah,
talking about television.
yeah. But starting at the beginning of the year, books that I was obsessed with, and I still feel like I'm trying to like tattoo these books on my heart,
Yeah.
were A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. They're novellas, they're cozy sci-fi, and they hit me at the perfect moment. Sometimes books just get you at the right time, and these hit me at the right time. And it was so nice to be able to finish one book and then I love the feeling of being like I have to go get the next book immediately. So I had my mom run to the bookstore to go get it for me when she was in town and everything. And I'm just obsessed with these books. I could reread them a million times. I think that the messages within them are so comforting and they they really just allow readers to feel like it's okay to sit in the moment that you're in. And they did that for me. So
I would
those
definitely
are some of
agree.
my favorites.
I would agree. I read the first one. I haven't read the second one yet. I ran out of time at the library. I think those are some of the best books ever. Like I know that again, I talk about it a lot, but my partner's sister lives with us and she just reread those.
Mm-hmm.
And they hold a special place in her heart. So I think there's something about those novellas that like hit people in such a specific way and they're so well done. And I remember that Sarah of Fiction Fans fame suggested it as one of your
Yeah.
30 books for your 30th birthday. And so I'm glad that
Sarah
that
does
was
not
one of those
miss.
that she picked. Like it was just so good. I remember that was like one of the like most recent books I had purchased out of all of those because a lot of them I
Mm-hmm.
found used or just books throughout
Mm-hmm.
time. But like that one was well worth it and definitely on my favorites as well. So
Yeah.
I love that Laura feels so strongly about it. I know like people get like think about tattoos of those books and like
Yeah.
they're really important to a lot of people. So I definitely agree with that take. Good pick,
Absolutely.
Laura. My
Hannah, what's up?
first my first like favorite of the year that I read is one that I know that I talked about but not a ton, and
Mm-hmm.
that's Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I
Mm-hmm.
would not say that this is a perfect book by any means, but I did like it. I thought it was just a really well like done second chance romance. It dealt with a lot of stuff like of a couple who like had children who lost each other along the way due to like parental grief. It talks about grief. It talks about like very difficult dynamics between like mothers and daughters. And it's just like a very well done romance that I haven't read for a long time. I feel like it's almost a throwback to like 90s fiction that's a little bit more sad and bittersweet, but
Mm-hmm.
happy at the end. And I really enjoyed that book. And I remember when I was reading it, I was like, I get why a lot of people love this book. I know it's also like Kennedy Ryan is a person who's very important to like people in the Black community who are readers because it is a romance and a fiction that speaks to a lot of them. Um, and so I think like that's like all of that considered means that it just has to go on my favorites of the first of the years that I read.
Awesome. I love that. I'm going to switch it up and go to TV.
Perfect.
So I did talk about this show on the podcast because this was like maybe one of the last shows that I remember mentioning before we took our hiatus from talking about TV. But a new season of The Bear came out this year, And I went on record saying that season 1, I was kind of just like, meh, I don't really get all the hype. Like, it is what it is. Season 2 was a work of art, and the emotions and the acting were so phenomenal. I can't get over how well it was written, how well it was acted. It was phenomenal. I honestly right now have goosebumps just even thinking
Oh,
about some of the episodes because they were so good.
yeah.
If you have not watched The Bear, I would highly recommend it. It follows a family who are working through complicated relationships after the death of one of their family members, and they are struggling to maintain a restaurant and then working to build a new restaurant in the second season. So these are not spoilers. These are
No.
obvious things that are happening, but the things that happen within the show and with the characters are so phenomenal. The character arcs that the writers give these people, absolutely phenomenal. If this show does not get a zillion Emmys, I will be furious because it's doing something that I feel like a lot of other TV shows are not doing, and it's just beyond the scope of what so many TV shows I think are kind of hyper focusing in on, and it has so much heart and so much creativity. So The Bear is on my list of top TV.
Right. Well, I'm going to do a little bit funny for Flora because she watched certain parts of this TV show, but
Okay.
Taskmaster has to go on my favorites of
Okay.
the year. I love Taskmaster. I think it's so fun. I feel like this year I haven't been like super into TV. Like I, again, for people like who have followed us for a long time, a lot changed in my life this year. Laura, this was a bad year for Laura, but this was a year of a lot of like changes for me. And I think like because of that, I didn't watch a ton of new stuff. And like I also, moved in with my partner and you start building a life together. So sometimes that's hard to like find TV shows when you're this early in the stage of a relationship. Um, but Taskmaster was something that we started watching like December of last year and continue to watch. And there's like so much joy and lightheartedness. And it has like a lot of stuff, which is like, I love British television. I feel like it has a lot of that. I love the comedic effect. I love how silly it is. And like, it's just a good escapist like moment for me. And it was a new TV show that I could enjoy watching. And it has a million seasons that you can find on YouTube. So why not?
Sure. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely.
So a little bit of a silly one for Laura's like very serious and very cool pick.
I guess I'll veer off of my like super heartfelt, like emotional things that I've been liking. But these books that I read, I would not say I would call them absolute favorites, but the way that they stood out in my mind, and I literally maybe think about them once a week because
Okay.
they're so disturbing and so strange. Hannah, you have to read them to even understand what is going on. But
Okay.
Earthlings and Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata
Oh,
were
yeah.
some of the books that I read this year. Short reads, incredibly strange and hard to read at times, but I can't stop thinking about them. They're books that I don't know if I would recommend to everyone because they have difficult themes,
Hmm.
but they're definitely books that are creative and stick with you and take you for a ride, honestly.
Mm.
So, yeah, if you're into something darker and trying to figure out like what goes on in the human psyche, how trauma can affect people, these are books that you should check out. And I just had to mention them at the end of the year because I was like, even if they aren't books that I'm like, oh, this is my absolute favorite, the way that they hit me and I wanted to talk about them with people is something that doesn't happen to me that often.
Hmm.
And what have you got next?
So this is surprising for the fact that I didn't love the first book, but the prequel definitely got me. A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon.
Ah, yes.
I loved this book so much. I remember I got the Neck Alley book and I kind of was like, okay, I signed up for it because you kind of have to, because I read the first one for Mega May. It was a huge, important moment. And I picked it up and I was like, oh gosh, why did I ask for the NetGalley version of this book other than my own like audacity? I
I
don't know
will
why
say
I
though,
picked
when
it.
you're reading a book that giant, it's so much easier to tackle it when it's on a Kindle. I don't know why. I would much rather read a giant book on ebook because like I'm currently sitting looking at my books at the moment and I'm like, I want to read the first binding, but it looks so big that it kind of
Mhm.
scares me and I wish I would have got the ebook.
So I freaking loved that book. I remember I read it with Sandra from Story Darlings fame.
Yeah.
And the entire time we were texting each other like, so this book like rocks, right? And we both couldn't believe it because we hadn't enjoyed the first one that much. And I just loved it so much. I thought it was so good. It was so enjoyable. And it hit in ways that like it felt like the first book almost felt like it was weighed down, and this book felt lighter in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because I knew some of the lore for the first book, or if it was just like her writing was a little bit fresher and quicker in this book. Like, obviously, it was still the same amount of pages, but there was less like details to get bogged down in, and less like, this is the
Mm-hmm.
fashion here. And I just loved it so much. I had such a good time, and I'm so glad read it. And I just thought it was like so good, guys. So if you've read a Priory of the Orange Tree and you're like, I don't know if I want to pick up the second book, I honestly adored it, and it was just so good, and that was why I have to put it on my favorites. I thought the themes in it were much more interesting. I thought like finding the different like love stories in it was also just like amazing. This was just everything to me. I felt a lot more for this book than I did her first, so it was surprising.
Well, and I've heard other people say actually very similar things where they either were just kind of meh about Priory or they even some people that liked it. The prequel book, A Day of Fallen Night, seems to be immensely
So good, guys. So good.
well received. I cannot think. Oh my
No,
gosh,
it's
immensely
okay.
well received. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people on Instagram saying basically the same thing that you're saying, Hannah, that they weren't too sure about Priory, but they really enjoyed A Day of Fallen Night.
Mm-hmm. So what's next on your list, Laura?
Okay, so this has been my sci-fi year, my sci-fi era, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and especially just my Star Wars era. Like
Yes, it
I,
has been, guys.
so
So much Star Wars.
friends, I love Star Wars. Like it's been a year for me, honestly. Like I have not had a great year. Things have been difficult with my health and infertility and depression. They've all been knocking at my door and they finally came for me. And, it was really nice to be able to escape into science fiction and fantasy worlds this year when typically I don't feel like I lean on science fiction and fantasy as much. I'm very much a lit fic girly. So,
Yeah.
which is probably why the bear resonated with me so much because I was like, oh, but this year I leaned heavily on Star Wars. I rewatched all the movies, which I had already seen the movies,
Mm-hmm.
but I rewatched all the movies and then I started watching the shows and I really enjoyed watching Andor.
Yeah.
Andor it's like a prequel to Rogue One and it is really just a fantastic show. If you have not watched it, I would highly recommend it, especially if you liked Rogue One. You would really like Andor, but it's a short series. It's not a lot of episodes, so it's easy to consume. And I just think that it's gritty and dynamic, and it keeps you on your toes, and you're interested in a bunch of different characters and their storylines. And it was honestly a highlight of my year, and I think I'm going to rewatch it again because we just got news that the next season isn't going to come out to like 2025, which is super
Uh,
disappointing.
yeah, that's
Because I
not
thought it was
that's
going to come out next year.
those
Yeah,
strikes, man.
come on. But yeah, it was definitely a highlight of my year watching Andor. Highly, highly recommend that show.
Next up, I'm gonna do another book, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I listened to this book. It is a long book, but it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, I believe. Um,
And I really liked this book. It's a book told through like different tales of different women in Britain. Most of them are Black women. And it looks into like identity, feminism, and like intersectionality of race, class, like all of those things. And I just thought it was so well done. The author has such a way of like making you really feel a character in a short amount of time. And each time they're like flawed people, they're fully realized people, and I really just enjoyed every single second of this book. I didn't know what to expect. I this year, one of my goals was the fact that like I've been listening to more audiobooks lately. Like I think my percentage is like 47% audio this year, when it was like maybe at a 20% in years past, because I'm traveling more and I just have like more time to do audiobooks. And I wanted to be more intentional with those and listen to more diverse authors, because I was quick to like listen to a million Megan Miranda books on audiobook to like pass the time. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be listening to books more and more, I need to be more, I need to be careful about what I'm doing there just as much as in the books I read or the uh, media I consume. And this was just a book where I probably wouldn't have picked it up last year via audio, because it would have been one of those where I was like, oh, it's too daunting. I should read it in physical format. I should do this. I should do this. And I just kind of let myself sit with it. I think it was like it was just so well done for an audiobook, and it was so well written, and it just really captured a very specific mood in each of these women that I greatly adored. And it was like a longer version of I believe it's called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies or something. I forget the actual
Okay.
name, but that novella is also like amazing. And this was just, it felt like a longer, like more adept version of that. And I enjoyed it greatly. So that's my next step.
Awesome. I love it. So I'll switch back over to books now too. I'll give you an audiobook also. This was one that had hit my radar because it was the Spiffbo winner, and
Mm.
it got a lot of hype. And usually I'm a little bit hesitant with books that have a lot of hype, but this one did not disappoint. And it was Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater.
You did
This
love this book.
this was a really fun, really heartwarming book. If you like Good Omens but want something like a little bit lighter, because I don't think it's near as sarcastic and quite as biting as Good Omens, but if you want something along those lines, where we're talking about angels and demons and talking about who's good in the world and who's bad, and figuring a lot of the different nuances of going about our lives and our journeys. Small Miracles is a book you definitely need to pick up. The audiobook I thought was very well done. And so I'd recommend that. And I'm pretty excited actually to check out more of Atwater's work, because Olivia Atwater is a prolific author. I didn't I don't know why I always assume like, oh, like Spiffbo, this is like one of their first go
Right.
rounds of like publishing, that this is how they're getting recognized. No, many of these authors that are participating in this contest have tons of work that is out there.
Mhm.
Some have traditionally published work and also self-published work. And I think that is the case for Olivia Atwater. But this was such a fun book. And it's one of those that makes you smile. I loved some of the jokes in it, and the characters were just a lot of fun. So if you're looking for something fun, something a little bit lighter hearted, and some good voice acting, check out Small Miracles.
Oh, good. I'm gonna do a quick shout out to another friend of the pod with this indie author. The Part About the Dragon Was Mostly True by Sean
That was on
Gibson
my list.
is definitely one of my favorites of the year. This was such a joy to read. I loved it so much. I thought like he has such a unique and comedic voice. It was so exciting to get to read all about it, and like to be able to talk to him afterwards, hear about his like experience writing this book. And I love this book because not enough books anymore get to be fun sometimes, especially
Right.
when you and I are constantly reading for like in-depth analysis.
Sure.
And this book was so fun, and like the voice was so great. I loved the songs and the playful like narrative, and the way he played with like perspectives and how stories get told after the fact. I just thought it was so great. And it's like been a joy to be able to read that book. So that's my next one.
I think my favorite thing about that book was honestly that the author does not take himself that seriously, and that he
No.
doesn't take his book that seriously. And there's so many times when you're either listening to podcasts where certain authors are on, or you hear about people talking about authors. And I'm saying this within like my own experience of listening to like fantasy authors talk, but this happens within all genres. It's not just fantasy, but you hear people that get like so like in depth about it, where they're just like, oh, well, this has to mean this. And they kind of almost have like a chip on their shoulder about capital L literature or capital F fantasy. And sometimes it's nice to just read a book because it's fun and it makes you laugh, and there's jokes about poop. And here or people who are traveling and they have to figure out where they're going to get more clothes or what have you. So that was a really fun book. And shout out to Sean for coming on the pod and talking with us. I mean, shout out to the other Hannah for coming on and talking with us. That was an absolute delight of a book, and it's so much fun to chat with him about that.
Laura, what's up next for you?
Let me see here. I'm trying to think of what shows I watch. I can only think of more Star Wars at the moment. I watched
excuse me, you forget about the greatest show of all, Teen Beach Movie.
Yeah, not a highlight.
Excuse you, that was a great movie.
It was fun to watch that movie with Veronica, and it was a great trip. I would not say Teen Beach Movie like stands out in my mind like, oh, favorite movie ever. But
I'm just scrolling through all of our different episode notes.
Very funny. But I watched The Mandalorian and really enjoyed the first 2 seasons. The third season, and it's starting to lose me because it looks like they haven't put as much money into it, honestly.
Fair enough.
And I don't know if they're trying to transition out of making it the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda show, or if they want it to be about Bo-Katan. Who knows at this point, but I really wish they would kind of go back to that classic feel that they had in the first season of The Mandalorian, where it was just kind of like each episode was a new adventure with the Mandalorian and Grogu, Baby Yoda. And because that just had kind of a good rhythm. But I understand they have writers who have specific ideas about where they want the plot and these characters to go. So I understand. I'm just saying I will watch it. I'm just saying I don't know that it feels as much fun as it did in previous seasons. So yeah, The Mandalorian, definitely something that I really enjoyed this year, and my dog has enjoyed it too because I've gotten him so many Mandalorian toys because there's lots of those available for dogs.
Nice. Well, next up on my TV shows, a show that I have to talk about all the time because I freaking love this show, Yellow Jackets.
I knew that was coming for you. Okay.
Love Yellow Jackets. It's so wild and out of pocket, and like half the time you're like, sure, is this good? Like, is this good television, or are we just told it's like prestige television, so it's artwork, or is it just like pure camp and like utter just like what? Because I love that show so much. I watch it like you can only watch it in bits and pieces. I think the most I've ever been able to watch in a single night was like 3 episodes. And then I was like, I have to go scrub my mind. That was so messed up. But just watching these children try to like exist in a woods, like you just have so many weird moments, so many moments where you're like, what's happening? And like there's weird cult stuff, there's weird like cannibalism. Like I'm not surprising anyone, like everyone knows that this is coming, sort of. But like just the way it's a wild way that they weave this show, and it's interesting to watch. And it's a wild ride, and I cannot explain it enough other than like it keeps you on your toes. There's always jump scares, and even what you're expecting is never quite what you expected. So it's very good. People should watch it if they really like messed up shows that are very psychological. I feel like as I get older, I get more and more into like horror light movies. Probably not a straight horror fan ever, but enough that I'm like, oh no, this is exactly what I want to watch, and I'm gonna have a good time while doing it. So that one is definitely on my best of this year.
This is kind of a different genre than what we've been talking about, but I dipped my toe into manga this year, and it was recommended to me to read Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama.
Mm-hmm.
And I read the first 9 volumes. I'm still waiting on volume 10. Libby, get with it. Yes, but these are so sweet and interesting, and the art is phenomenal. I love being able to. So I figured out that I really enjoy graphic novels, reading them on my tablet, just because I can kind of like zoom in and out and look at the art a little more. I don't know why, I just get like so sucked into some of the scenes, but the art in Witch Hat Atelier is fantastic. And I have so enjoyed the characters and their journeys in this series, and it's enough of a mystery that it keeps me hanging on and wanting to know what's going on. And I'm attached to the characters as well because they're so kind and on their own personal growth journeys themselves. And it's just a really sweet series, and the art and the creativity involved in how they put the book together is fantastic. Thank you to listener GJ for recommending that series. Absolutely love it. One of my favorites, definitely a highlight this year, because I was recently talking to someone about like my reading, and I was like, oh yeah, like I made a goal to read more indie books this year, and I definitely achieved that goal because I read more than I did last year, but manga really screwed up my statistics because I read so much manga.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Witch Hat Atelier, highly recommend if you're looking for something like, because I would say that it's definitely something that will appeal to a lot of different readers. And if you're not quite sure what manga to go for, this is maybe one that's easy to get into the manga reading with.
Well, next up on my list is, I honestly didn't know where I was going to go next. So I have to think a little bit, but I would say that one of my best reads of the year was probably Camp by Elsie Rosen. This one, I only gave it 4.75 on Goodreads or on Storygraph, because sometimes I think some books I'm like, I love this so much, but I wish the message were like a little bit better. But I am very happy that this book exists. I think it's very cute. It's about a boy who decides to make himself a little bit more masculine in order to date his camp crush. And they get together. It's a romance, and it's kind of all about like finding who you are. I really like the message of this book because I think like a weaker book would have been like, never change anything about yourself. Don't change for anyone. Don't do anything, like you. And this book does have elements of that, but it also has elements of like, it's okay to try on new personalities when you're in high school because it may teach you something about yourself. And I like that. I feel like high schoolers are often told like, just be the best version of yourself. But as someone who in high school did try on different hats to learn who I was, like, I think that people aren't taught that enough. And it's a good way to live because like in this book, he talks about how he like gained new perspective on sports, and he likes that now, and he likes working out, and he likes finding things that he liked. And like, yes, he didn't find those parts of himself in the best way, but he doesn't mind that he did discover those new parts of himself. And I definitely appreciated that. I also appreciated the way the book handled like homophobia, because it talks about internalized homophobia. It also talks about like how a person can safely come out to their parents, which I think is a message that is discussed more and more in this day and age. Where like in the book, there's a character who like can't safely be their true self around their parents, and that is like a discussion. And I think I've seen that in other shows. Like I just finished watching Heartstopper last night, which of course is a great show, but like that also talks about what is safely coming out, and it's a huge storyline with multiple characters, where multiple characters will be like, no, I'm not going to force you out of the closet to like be quote unquote your true authentic self, because you might not be capable of doing that at this point in time, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I really appreciated that about that book, and I thought it was wonderful as a YA novel for people who really need to hear that.
I love that. Yeah, I have seen several people saying things about like, do we need another coming out story? And honestly, yes, because they're so different and we need to see lots of different representation in our media. So the people that are making those critiques, like, be quiet.
Yeah. Or like,
So,
I mean, it's valid when it's like, when it's people in the queer community being like, is that the only story we get told? They should have a
that's fair.
plethora of
That's fair.
stories.
I'm
But like
seeing
people
it
who
from
are like,
heteros.
yeah, from all you heteros out there, like keep your mouth shut and listen to queer community people who are saying
Yeah,
like, hey,
and
I want dynamic stories about us. I don't want to just watch a story about like trauma of coming out again, because it's just like, oh well, then we need a plethora of
yes.
stories.
I'm speaking to my fellow straight people who I've seen complaining about this. Just be quiet. You can hear about queer love, queer stories, and learn from other people's experiences, and you should.
And like, I'm sorry, there are many decades of hetero stories. Just go watch those.
Yes.
Like, they're out there, I promise.
Just,
and I bet you'll like them better. Like, I
right.
don't
Just quit
couldn't tell you
complaining.
why.
Hannah, another TV show that I really love, and I still need you to watch it because I need your thoughts on it. I told you to watch it, and I'm gonna go really light on talking about it because I don't want to like reveal anything. But Undone on Amazon Prime Video was so good. So good. The first season especially, like I could not peel my eyes away from the screen. It was sucking me in. And I really just need you to watch this because I think it blends science fiction and mental health representations so well and leaves so many questions up to the viewer to answer. And I loved it so much. And it's also a really creative way that they have shown it on the screen, because I think I mentioned this before when I talked about the show previously, that it was a show that was filmed and then they went back and did like animation over top of the filmed scenes. So it looks like it's drawn or watercolor almost, but they had filmed the actors acting out the scenes and then animated over it. So it's really creative in multiple ways, and also one that's trippy and makes me just think about it all the time because I'm like, what do other people think when they have X, Y, or Z happen? It handles trauma, it handles family dynamics. It's so good. So good. And I'm late to the party on this one because this one came out in 2019. But Hannah, you've got to watch it soon.
Oh, I know. And another psychological one that I was trying to look through our notes because I was like, I do not remember if this was a 2022 show I watched or 2023 show I watched. But regardless, it's a show that sticks with me and I almost want to do a rewatch. And that's Severance on Apple TV. I freaking love that show. And it hasn't been announced if it's canceled or not because the first season came out last year and it's probably still like on the chopping block because TV is a hellscape right now. But this show was so good about a person who severs their personality at work versus who they are at home. So neither party knows what the other one is doing. And it is so psychologically messed up the way the show like has so many layers on it, the way you're always like, what's going on? Why is this person living next door to Adam Scott? What is Adam Scott doing? What is he doing at work? What are all these people doing? And the way that like you learn about identity through like what would happen if you're forced to not know who you are on the outside and you only get to live like in 8-hour increments, like what that could do to you, how you could react. It's just so fascinating. And I love this show so much. I think it's so good. It sticks with me. I think about it constantly. And I just need another season because, like, why? It's very similar to a lot of the shows I loved growing up, which are like Dark Angel, The Dollhouse, like shows like that, which are like more sci-fi. I realized I really loved sci-fi like shows growing up that were very like dystopian. So, I mean, we grew up in a dystopian era, but I definitely loved that show a lot.
I hope that it gets renewed for you.
I know, me too.
This is a weird time in television where things are quick to be cut just because they're not meeting certain numbers. And I think that's unfortunate because a lot of times, especially streamed shows like that aren't coming out on a network at all, like for people who do not stream, they kind of develop a cult following later on. And there's a lot of shows I know that are like that, where they were canceled quickly and then they have a huge following later on. And you even ask some of the actors and they're like, oh yeah, I would have loved to have continued with that role, but they cut it too quick because we didn't have the viewers. So not every show is going to have the Stranger Things affect people. And when I say people, I'm talking corporations who are listening to this, as we know they are. Quit
Top of
cutting
their
our
list.
TV shows too quickly and expecting them to be instant hits like Stranger Things. Give us some time. Hannah, another favorite book of mine, I'm still in my sci-fi era, Goodbye to the Sun by Jonathan Navarre.
Oh my goodness.
I am a big fan of Jonathan Navarre's work. I read his book Stellar Instinct.
I mentioned we should have him on the pod, and Laura was like, I need to mentally prepare myself for when that happens.
So I read Stellar Instinct last year at the end of the year and loved it. It was super fun. It was a spy-fi like thriller, and it's like girl James Bond in space, and there's cool technology and all these other things. And I've got the sequel to Spy a Star that I need to start reading, but COVID brain has hit me, so I haven't really been reading too much as of late. But I read Goodbye to the Sun earlier this year, and that's the first book in the Windtide trilogy. And it was so good. It gave me all the feels of Andor, and I love Dune, and it reminded me a lot of Dune as well. But there's just, not only is there just like beautiful prose in this book, but the characters are so interesting and nuanced. Like, Jonathan has a knack for writing characters. I need to get into the next 2 books in that series immediately. I just have a horrible habit of like scheduling a bunch of books to be on this podcast and then having to read all of them, and then my brain poops out. So
terrible habit.
I'm making a priority for it's a terrible habit. I'm making a priority next year to finish the Windtide series because I loved the first book. It was so good. And shout out to Jonathan for just being so kind and nice to me this year. There were moments, I don't even know if he realized this, but there were moments when I was feeling pretty down at times, and he would just randomly reach out to me and chat about Star Wars or a book that we were reading, or just ask for book recommendations, or say that he listened to our podcast. And that was so kind and meant so much to me. And I am still going to be very flabbergasted if we ever have the joy of having Jonathan on the podcast. Like, will I be able to compose myself? We will see. It will be a lot. But Goodbye to the Sun, highly recommend. And maybe we should do like a buddy read for the other 2.
Yes, we should. Well, next up on my list is a show I have not finished yet, but we both adore, which is Our Flag Means Death.
Okay, I finished the first season.
Okay, I haven't yet. I started watching it with my dad, and I've only watched like 4 episodes, guys, but it's going to be an all-time favorite show. Like, I can't help it.
Yes.
It's so good. It's such a joy.
Does your dad love it? Because I was watching it with my husband and he really liked it.
I feel like my dad doesn't quite get it. Like, it doesn't help that like we keep watching it too late, so he keeps like almost falling asleep. And my dad and I are more into like psychological stuff together. Like, we watch more Killing Eve, where we're both like, that was messed up, let's watch 5 more episodes. But I love this show so much. Taika Waititi is amazing, and like,
why is he so perfect at that role?
So
like, he's the perfect Blackbeard.
He's the perfect Blackbeard. The way he delivers his lines is like chef kiss. Like,
yes,
I just love this silly little pirate show where the guy pays them minimum wage and they're all furious about it.
They're so mad that their employer treats them well and offers them health benefits. It's amazing.
It's not very good work, but I do give them a living wage. It's just like, oh, and he just wants to play tennis and pretend he's a pirate. Like, just let him, guys. I love the show so much. It's so good. 10 out of 10. So
one
funny.
Of the funniest things is when what is the pirate's name who always claims to work for
Oh
Blackbeard?
my gosh, I forget, but he's so funny. When I worked with Blackbeard,
Yeah, he's always talking about how he worked with Blackbeard, but
boss,
he was
you're the
talking about
only
it,
one
and
who believes that he
yes,
worked for Blackbeard. Is that true?
like he's talking about how his head is made of smoke and he's got
Yes.
red eyes, and someone's like, so are his eyes floating? I never said anything about the eyes floating.
Oh,
The
Black
eyes,
Pete.
Black Pete, that's it.
Black Pete.
He's so funny. I love him. But yeah, that show is so cute and a ton of fun, and so many like resemblances to What We Do in the Shadows.
Another one of our all-time favorite shows.
Which we should just talk about it now. What We Do in the Shadows. That'll be my next pick. What We Do in the Shadows. Because the 5th season came out this year. How did you feel about the 5th season?
So I haven't finished it yet because I usually watched it with my cousins. This is the first season that I've watched by myself, and sometimes you just forget to watch it when you're watching something by yourself. But I still very much enjoyed it. I think there was like some wild off the wall takes, but I also feel like that's what you need with that show. Like sometimes you just need baby Colin Robinson to, pop up, and then you need to watch it and be like, oh, of course there's a political intrigue episode. Like, why wouldn't there be? Why wouldn't Colin Robinson be running for something? And so I very much enjoyed that. So I think I'm enjoying it. It's always hard when you have a show that some of the best seasons are. It's hard to have staying power when it's like, oh, it's another season of wild, kooky vampire stuff. But it's hard to mess with things like, hey, I'm being gay over here. It's such a good line. I love that line. And so I don't know if it's my favorite season, but I do like it. What are your thoughts?
So I would agree with that. I think for me, the 4th season had been my favorite. And I think it was just a tough season to follow. But I was talking with some of my quote unquote friends on Reddit, and it was mentioned a lot how people were feeling a little disappointed by the 5th season, and they were kind of expecting certain things to happen and certain plot lines to return. And someone pointed out, and I think this is the best way to think about this show, honestly, that the point of this show is not to develop plot lines.
Right.
It is to literally mention something and then throw it away for the laugh. This show is all about the joke. It is not about character arcs. It is not about plot lines. It is literally just for a laugh, and they move on.
Yep.
And they will have plot arcs in a single season, but then they're done because they do not want to deal with it anymore. And I think that that's probably the best way to look at this show, and honestly to kind of chunk it into seasons, if you will, because there isn't really that flow between the seasons. If I start looking at them from a broader aspect, the characters are connected and you can remember what has happened to them previously, and they'll mention it from time to time, but really they have short memories because they will have traumatic things happen to them, and they'll turn on each other or do this or that, immediately forgotten once you get to the next episode or next thing. And
which I actually think is the most realistic depiction of vampires. Could you imagine being angry
their lives
at someone
are so
for
long.
500 years? It's no, that of course there's going to be huge turmoils or huge very big upsets where it's 300 years ago you tried to murder me, but that was it's just so long ago, and who cares?
Exactly. So I think that the best way to look at that show is literally to just remember that it's not about the plot. It's all about the joke, and to just kind of live in the moment and enjoy what they're doing for the joke, because they just want the viewers to have fun and to laugh. And it is a great laugh. And this season kind of gets absurd at times, even for what the show is. It gets absurd. So I do really love that show, and I appreciated some of the character matchups that they did in this show, because in this season, because they kind of changed it up a little from their norm, which was refreshing. So I thought it was really good. What have we got next, Hannah?
Next up is a little bit more of a serious book. I listened to Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This was a book that I think I should probably reread once a year. It's very short, but it is a conversation between Ta-Nehisi and his son and what it means to be a Black man in America, with the American history and ideals of like our history and how it does not work for the Black community and how Black men are affected by it. And I thought it was very well done. It has a lot of raw emotions in it, and it's so well written. It's very, very short. So like pick it up from your local library in audiobook form, listen to it. I listen to book on 2 times the speed, and I think like probably a little bit slower on this one, but it's like an hour and a half long if you double the speed. So it's like not that long. It's very good. It's very interesting, and it means a lot. And I think like books like this really matter, especially when it's something as raw as like speaking to your child about the life he may have to live. I think a lot of people don't have to think about that all the time, or do think about it, but this is a very unique perspective on what it means to raise a future Black man in America. And I think that that's very important. And I loved listening to it, and I probably do need to reread it at least once a year because I think it's just that important.
Great pick.
Mm-hmm.
So my pick is not quite as meaningful and
Healing.
serious. Hard to follow that. But I know we said we weren't going to talk about Martha Wells, but I'm going to talk about Martha Wells because it's not Murderbot.
It's not Murderbot.
It's not Murderbot. It's Witch King. And so Martha is, I think, trying to delve more into fantasy. I think she is drawn to fantasy as an author and as a reader, from what I can tell, because I've listened to her in several interviews. We talked to her. She recommended to us that if you're looking for a starting point in her work, start with Witch King. And so I think that is kind of telling about the direction that she wants to go with her writing. But Witch King is a really, really good fantasy story. And I'm excited that there's going to be a sequel coming out, because even though this book stands alone pretty well, I would like to go back to these characters and kind of sit with them a little more and kind of learn more about their world, because it's very deep, it's very complicated, but in the best way, where I was trying to figure out who is this and what was connected to this and what happened here and what happened here. And the way that it was written with a dual timeline, fantastic. I love that Martha continues to bring in the questions of what makes somebody human, what constitutes a good person or bad person / character. These are all themes that are present in Witch King as well. And if you're looking for a more complicated, more twisted fantasy that kind of turns things on its head, this is the book that you need to pick up.
Next up for me is How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. Whew, what a book. This was for my small September. It's 191 pages. And my gosh, the way Angie Cruz can get into a complicated character and just really live in them and make you feel so many things, like frustrated and upset and horrified at some of the actions of this person, but understanding like it. I feel like it's something that a lot of millennials struggle with, even, is like empathy towards our parents who are maybe not the greatest of people. I think that there's like good criticism to be had for people who are problematic and everything, but this shows like how human it can be to make mistakes or be too hard, and how that can kind of come from trauma. Because the woman in this book is not a great person all the time. Like, she's done some horrible things. Like, in the book, her sister isn't speaking to her for a good reason. And she's sitting there and she's like, well, I want to work, but also I can't do those things because I'm limited in these ways, And I think it like espouses a lot of things where if you were looking at her through certain lenses, you would be like, oh, she would be the villain of a story. But in this book, she's so human, and she deserves empathy just as much as a lot of other people, because like her hurt and pain she has caused others didn't come from nowhere. She was treated poorly throughout her life. She thinks she's in the right, and like she is someone who deserves empathy, and it's very reflective and very interesting. And I like had so many mixed emotions, and I thought it was so interesting because it also talks about like the limitations of people who work in community, where like in this book it's told through the lens of her talking to a person who's trying to get her a job, and like the jobs keep being like, I can't work there because look, I have to service my community every Tuesday, Thursday. Like I have to make sure this happens and I have to make sure this happens. And that's all very true. And I feel like people don't always see the trees for the forest almost. Like I feel like people are like, well, in the forest, like you're not doing this, you're not doing this. And it's like, no, but there's so much richness like going on underneath the surface that like it was just very fascinating to see, and it was very reflective, and I really adored this book, and I thought it was so well done.
It's great. Okay, and I'm going back to shows.
Okay.
Another Prime show. I'm surprised by the Prime shows that I watched this year because I really enjoyed them. But Upload was a super fun show.
Waiting for that one.
That is a super fun show, and the second season came out recently. I haven't got to it yet because I've been watching so much Marvel, but I'm excited to get into the second season of it. The first season was really engaging, and I love a lot of the questions that this show is asking in terms of like what is a moral action and what is something that we should try to limit, that something that we should be allowing people to do, how involved should we let corporations be in our lives, what is a good afterlife plan, who can we trust with our care. All of these kinds of questions are brought in, and it's done with a humorous spin, and it's also they give a lot of care to situations and also kind of try to imagine what a future world could look like and add in the mystery, of course. So it's a fun show. I think that it's likely one that it's likely one that I can see like being canceled, honestly, because I'm not sure where they'll go with the second season, but if they slow it down, it doesn't look good. But it's hard to pick up on the momentum of the first season, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, the third season just came out. Ugh, Laura.
You're fine.
But yeah, if the third season kind of slows down, then I'm a little worried about like how long this show will last. Yeah. And I know that there was some like kind of debate about whether it was going to come back even for a third season. So it gets difficult with some of these shows, I think, to kind of continue to advance the plot from where they were and to keep making the points that it wants to make, because sometimes I do think shows need to be a little limited, where it's like, you know what, we have this point that we want to make, we have this character that we want to do this, and then we're going to be done. And I think that more shows need to be kind of along those lines of like a British television show where they're just like, we're doing this and we're getting out. And American shows tend to want to drag it out as long as humanly possible, and this may be one of those shows that gets drug out too long. Jury's still out on whether or not that happens for this show, but I'm going to watch the third season soon and I'll keep you updated. But this was a really fun show for me.
Okay, well, for TV shows, something that I still have complicated feelings about, but I do love the series overall, and the final season did drop this year. Never Have I Ever.
Yes. I was unsure if I would mention this, but I'm glad you did, because this is your show.
This is my show. I have a lot of complicated feelings about the last season. I disagree with some of the ways it ended. But I do love the show. I love the show because like it's just so I don't know how many shows I've ever seen that really make me feel like, yep, those are high schoolers. Like those are high schoolers dealing with high school things. And like I loved that it felt very big to the people who it was happening to in the moment. But like as an adult where you're watching it, you're like, they're going to get through this because they're a high schooler. Like, this is not going to be the end of their life, even though it feels that way to them. And like, I really appreciated that in the show. I thought it just did so well of like some of the complicated feelings around like getting into colleges. And I loved the season for like what it did for Davy and her mom. Because I really thought that relationship ended beautifully. Like I think it showed a very complex story between two people who don't always understand each other but love each other. And something I did appreciate in this show in the final season especially was like, I think in the third season, you and I talked a lot about how we felt that like Davy kind of got pooped on a lot. Like accidents kept happening to her, and people kept being like, well, you're in the wrong. And you and I were both like, it feels like that's putting a lot on her for something like a high schooler did. Like, and this season I think did well at like, she did mess up in big ways, but there were people who were like, hey, can we all take a step back and realize like she dealt with trauma and like she gets to have that, and her mom defended her a lot more this season, which I appreciated. I wish we had more of Kamala because we did not have enough of her because she was pregnant in real life. But I really liked that storyline. I really liked the storyline of like friends trying to figure out what to do next, what it looks like for relationships. And I thought it had too much of a shiny little bow at the end of the season. I kind of just wanted it to like end in a like, this is our life and now we'll continue. But
Mindy Kaling loves to have a
shiny little bow
ever after with a couple.
I know.
She loves to have that, and everyone knew what was going to happen with the couple, and everyone was like, oh, come on.
Like, it didn't need to happen. It just didn't. No one needed that. But I really appreciate a lot about this show. I really think it did a great job of just showing real high schoolers dealing with stuff. Except for Paxton, who was 5 million years old, and I will forever...
and they kind of mentioned it.
Yeah, and I will forever think about the fact that a woman who looks like could be dating him was like, "Honey, I'm your mom," and it's like, "No, you're not. Like,
no,
get back away." But I don't know how I feel about the final season, but I do think it needs to go on my best of just because it's one of my all-time favorite shows. I think so, even with the complex emotions about the last season.
I dig it. Switching back to books for me.
All right.
I started the Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cahill, and oh my gosh, Hannah, I loved it. So these books, I got them all on my Kindle because all of them that are out, because I was like, they're huge and I will be afraid to read them if they are sitting in my hands, because I am weirdly afraid of giant books in my hands, but can go through them quickly on a Kindle. Explain that to my brain.
It makes your hands look so small. You can't handle it.
I have a large Kindle. So I think it's just literally the size of like some of these books. It just freaks me out. Like I don't know why, but it's so much easier to attack a book when it's in Kindle and I can't see that it's 8,000 pages.
Fair.
But they're going to get bigger as I go on here because I've only read the first book and the first novella in the series. But these books have been kind of described as like Aragon for adults. And I think it was the Brothers Gwyn that I heard describe it that way. And so I was like, I'm in. You sold me, because I would love to read some Aragon.
Yes, you would.
And I loved that series as a kid. So I was like, you know what? I need a Dragon Rider novel. And so this first book was a total delight. It's an epic fantasy. There's dragons. There's also all of the types of different like elves and dwarves and all these different peoples interacting that you would expect within a fantasy novel. It's an epic fantasy. There's a quest. There are 3 friends who are trying to figure out their role in the world, and they're trying to discover history. And there's a big overarching big bad who's trying to manipulate people to his will and all. I would say there's nothing about this book that is like stand out that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different story than I've ever read before. But it's a different story, and it's so comforting and fun to read, where I just ate it up, and I looked forward to coming home to read it. There's something special about a book where you're at work and you're looking forward to being able to get off work so you can go home and read. And that was Of Blood and Fire and The Fall for me, because once I finished Of Blood and Fire, I was like, well, I'm not done yet. I have to immediately move into some more of this. And so I picked up The Fall, which I'm not sure if you're supposed to read that novella after the first book. It seems like maybe it should be read first. It's a prequel, but it's still kind of, everything's still connected within my mind. So I'm going to excuse it for myself and say that it was okay to read in that order. But The Fall is then set hundreds of years in the past and details some of the events that led to the situations in Of Blood and Fire. But the characters are really fun and really relatable for a fantasy novel, you know. And I would just say I really enjoy how Ryan Cahill has kind of just taken a tale as old as time and kind of breathed new life into it with this book. And that's what I've really enjoyed about it. So this is another series that I'm going to be making a priority going into 2024 that I can read more of because I just enjoyed it so much.
Good.
Hannah, what have you got next?
Next up, I have a movie. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh.
I just recently rewatched this. I watched it in theaters. I adore these movies. I think they're so well done. I freaking love Miles Morales. I love the way they're building up this story. I walked in and I did not know some things that were coming up, and I was like shocked at the end. I cannot wait for the next movie. I think that this is like some of the best animations. I think it's some of the most unique storytelling. I think it's a really unique way to look at comic books. I love all the jokes about 1.5 million Spider-Men. Like, they're so good. It's so well done. Miles Morales is so adorable, and I like just watching his teenage awkwardness and like the way they deal with things such as like your place in this world and like fighting for your right to kind of exist in certain ways. So well done, so awesome. I just can't wait to see like where the story goes because I feel like it's just so unique. And yeah, I loved that movie. So
Hannah, I will be brief on this one because I want to talk about a movie too. And I'm going to do it because we've got another
we have to record another podcast in 20 minutes.
So I'm going to try to kind of rattle some of these off. But Jury Duty, I talked about that previously on the podcast. So much fun. I highly recommend. It's on Freevee, so I think it's widely accessible to people if you want to watch it. I loved the dynamics between the actors on this show. I don't know the staying power of this show because of how much it blew up this year, but I would love to see more seasons of this. If the writers and creators of this show want to come to my hometown, I know of several people who would be really great for this show that I'm positive have not watched it, and we could get involved in this. But yeah, just so much fun. James Marsden was hilarious. I loved that show. Go check it out. And then I'll bring up a movie in this same mention, the Barbie movie.
Oh, so good.
You loved it too. It was fantastic. Everyone loved it. It was getting everyone out to the movie theater. Like everyone loved it. It was fantastic. My Spotify Wrapped was embarrassing because my most played song was I'm Just Ken. And I played it 140 times this year.
Anytime there is a person like standing out in the middle of nowhere, anytime we're talking about a singular thing, I'll just go, and I'm just kidding. Like, it's never
I
want to
know what it's like. I love that.
I be a 10, where I see
and you feel the energy. It's just the cast was great. The whole movie was great. I went and saw it in theaters with my mom and my sister. We all three loved it. We all wore pink. It was such a fun time. Everyone go get Barbie if you have not already seen it.
Margot
so
Robbie
much fun.
So well done. So well done. It was just so good. So I know this is a little bit of a bad pick not a bad pick for Laura, but one where you're like, I don't know how I feel about it.
I know this is how we lose
the Time War. I really loved that book. I thought it was so fun. I thought it was so good. I know you were like, it just wasn't quite for me at the time you were reading it.
It just doesn't mesh with my brain. And I talked to somebody else that said the same thing, where they were like, I did the same thing. I read it in 2 formats, could not figure out what happened.
But I don't think I think it's just very much my vibe, where it's like weird and ethereal and a little bit like where you don't really know what you're reading at all times. Like I really love that kind of stuff, especially in sci-fi. And so reading about like the difference between blue and red, I liked thinking about like who's the protagonist here really, if you think about, because it's like told through letters, and it's told like, it's just really interested to read it. I like all the different ways people can read it. I think it's a very unique story. So that's my quick one. And then honorable mention, because as Laura said, we do have to start wrapping up soon.
Soonish,
Um, yeah, another book that I really want you to read because I'm super interested to see your thoughts on it. And I haven't talked about this on the podcast yet. So sorry for doing two in a row. But I just read Shark Heart, a love story by Emily Haybeck. Super fascinating read. It is a book about a man who is diagnosed in a world where sometimes people just become animals. They don't really understand what happens afterwards, but like slowly you just start turning into something. And he is diagnosed with the rare form of turning into a great white shark. It happens in the first year of his marriage to the love of his life, and it's all about his transformation over the course of 9 months, where he starts losing himself and he starts losing some of the things that make him a person. He starts having mood swings that are almost dangerous to his partner. It's really fascinating to read, and it's really about like watching a loved one go through something out of their control. And I think like it's an interesting tale of like dealing with that grief or dealing with that loss of relationship in ways you never expected. And then these, like, that's a huge part of the first part of the book. And I was kind of just expecting that to be the entire book, but all of a sudden it takes a swing halfway through, where I remember talking about it to people and I was like, I keep having to remind myself that like the beginning of this book was a man turning into a shark. And all of a sudden we're seeing like this other portion of stuff happen. And it's really interesting to read, and about like things that are out of your control, but still finding love and value in that. And it's a very well done book. It's very reflective, very interesting. And I really enjoyed it. And like, I just, it's so interesting. It's like on a lot of people's lists of things to read this year. So I'm one of many who are pushing this book, but great book. So
I'm also gonna do a quick twofer.
perfect.
So I've talked about this book a lot on the podcast, but Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, incredibly creative. I love, love, love how this book was written and how it just made me as a reader connect with and empathize, sympathize with a character or a set of characters that I never thought I would be connecting with. And I heard this from a lot of other people who read the book as well. It's a phenomenal sci-fi. And this, again, I need to finish up this series because it deserves more of my time. It's so good. It's so good. And then another book that I wanted to or another series that I wanted to mention that I read the first two books, but have not read the third yet, is the Broken Earth trilogy. And I gushed about these as well. The fifth season and The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, absolutely phenomenal. Like mind-blowingly well written. I was gasping reading the fifth season because things were catching me by surprise so much. And I cannot wait to cover this book series on the pod. I just think it will be perfect for our format and for what we're doing. It's so creative, so well written, and really is so much deeper than just a fantasy story. So those are two series that I'm hoping to get through. This is a common theme for me during this talk, that I start series and don't finish them.
That's why we have a podcast about it, Laura.
I've mentioned so many like beginnings of series and then I have not finished them. Whoops.
Yeah, we're slowly wrapping up here. I will say that I've been doing a lot of rewatches this year, and one of the shows I've been rewatching is it's like it's an honorable mention because it doesn't age well in a lot of ways, but I've been rewatching Psych.
I have never watched that.
Oh my gosh. It's right up my alley, which is like propaganda shows, but no, he's actually a psychic detective. And the cops in the show are like kind of buffoons, but it kind of made me nostalgic for TV shows that don't have to be the best, kind of how we were talking about with like streaming shows that can just exist. Psych was a line of USA shows that were like very specifically light, procedurals, similar to Monk, which I believe you did watch. Monk has been
I haven't watched Monk either.
Oh, I thought you haven't watched Monk, sorry.
No, I just know of Monk, the general premise of it.
Well, it's been revived. It's back on the air, so I'll be interested to watch that. But so these shows were like much lighter, but also often dealt with like, detectives just figuring out having something zany happening to them and being lighter. And I really want those shows back. I really enjoy like certain things about Psych that I just wish I saw on TV nowadays, where it's just like, oh yeah, there's just a light, there's 23 episodes. They're all pretty formulaic. They're very jokey. And something I also like about Psych was like, I feel like in TV now you have to have like characters that are all the things, but like also none of the things. Like they almost have to be catch-alls. And I really appreciate about this show is like it's about a friendship that like they don't always like each other. They get into like random tiffs, but at the end of the day, they love each other and they're willing to like be in on the jokes. So like I think a lot of shows I've watched after Psych, it's like you have the best friend who's zany and then you have the straight man. And this show definitely has that. But the straight man is also funny. Like he will make a joke and make jokes at people's expenses. And he'll like get in on like, if one of them is like, I'm going to name you a weird name. He's like, that is my name. Thank you. Like there's an episode where they're pretending to be models. And Sean, who's the main character and who is white, and Dule Hill plays Gus. He's like, we're black and tan. And he's like, oh, right this way, tan. And Sean is like, I'm black, he's tan. And Dule Hill is like, but it's weird that you thought it was the other way around. Like it's just like they play off each other. And I'm like, this is zany and light. And I really enjoy watching this show. And I kind of miss those types of shows where it's just like, it's like, you and I both started watching Ugly Betty this year at my recommendation. And there are certain moments where it's like, oh, this is a rough watch. But like it's also weird and light, and like it doesn't always have to be the most serious or the most dynamic show in the world. It can sometimes just be a fun light show that we're watching.
Sure. Another fun light show that I absolutely love this year. This is probably my last TV show that I can think of at the moment, but Ahsoka got so much hype this year. It came out. It was great. I loved it. There was one episode in particular that I'm thinking of that I won't mention what happens because you have not seen it. I'm sure there are listeners who have not seen it. But if you are a fan of Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, you will love Ahsoka. Dave Filoni is the creator of Ahsoka. Ahsoka is so good and so much fun. And I think that this was a show that a lot of Star Wars fans, even the ones that are hardcore, went into and came out of fairly satisfied. It wasn't something that had people angry. It wasn't something that people were like, meh. Yeah. I think people were fairly satisfied or thrilled with how it turned out. And that was my experience, where it was a ton of fun. I loved seeing what they did with it, how they approached some of these characters that were so well loved, and how they brought back some characters that we haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah, that's good. I think I've pretty much wrapped up. I do have a few honorable mentions that we definitely want to say. But do you have anything that you would like to add?
I actually have a couple more books that I wanted to mention. I'm just going to shout it out right now. My favorite book of the year, I just finished it recently, The Necessity of Rain by Sarah Chorn. This book cannot get enough praise. As I mentioned, this has been a really rough year for me. Just kind of working through the grief of not knowing what your life is going to be like after a lot of changes, and the grief of, saying goodbye to the life you thought you were going to have. This book made me feel so seen in its characters and the themes and the ways that it handled situations. It's absolutely beautiful prose. The characters are so relatable, and the writing is filled with so much emotion. I cried. I had sinking feelings in my stomach. I absolutely love this book. Cannot recommend it enough. I think Sarah Chorn is a talent, and that she needs to be getting more attention than she is getting. I am excited to pick up her other work. This was my favorite read of the entire year. Kudos to The Necessity of Rain and Sarah Chorn, absolutely amazing. And then I have a couple other ones I want to shout out that are just kind of like honorable mentions or things that we had on the pod.
I was going to do that as well for our wrap.
Okay.
So those are my honorable mentions. So
one honorable mention I had though was Monstrous. The latest volume came out. I did a reread of everything. It was so good. Everyone check it out. I'll start gushing about it next year. Go ahead, Hannah.
So we just want to give a shout out to some of the great books we have had on the podcast this year. Another one that we didn't mention, but I think it deserves all the love, Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee, came out this year. Excellently done. So good. Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. Laura and I adored this indie novel. Quebby Olsen,
I will scream from the mountaintops how good this book is.
Has such a delightful little romp of a book that is so genuinely like so much feeling, so much energy, and so much love for Miss Percy. She's amazing. She gets things done. A look at like older women in life who like find adventure and find fulfillment. Definitely need all of those types of stories. C.M. Kaplan's The Fall Is All There Is. I really liked this book. So creative, like random meat trees or what, I forget, like so many weird things that happen in this
like
book.
Things made of thyroid, cyborg horses,
yes, like quadruplets where like
shocking amputations, like oh my gosh,
so much happens in these books. I love the main character. I love seeing someone who's like a neurodivergent person who's just living their life, has all the feelings in the world, like such a deep look into like how science fiction can be used in this modern era to tell very specific stories. Emily J. Edwards, Viviana Valentine Goes Up the River. Guys, we adore this series. It's delightful. Look up the audiobooks if you haven't yet. Laura and I both did a reread via audiobook, and we were like, oh my gosh, I adore this so
the
much.
best way to read these.
It's so good. Like the oh my gosh, the narrator she has for this is amazing.
Yeah, she's a great actor.
Travis Baldry's Bookshops and Bone Dust and Legends and Lattes.
Love.
It's so hard to pick your favorite, but like so many good ones. Gabrielle Zavin's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. We had a great discussion with Sandra of Story Darlings fame on the pod about this book. So freaking good. So those are just some of the things we definitely covered on the podcast. Am I missing anything, Laura?
I mean, we obviously covered Murderbot, and we had Sean Gibson on. So I think we've covered a lot of the author. We had K.E. Andrews on for Assassin of Grins and Secrets.
Oh, yes.
That was a great discussion, too. And we also had MJ Kuhn, who was the author of Among Thieves, which was a ton of fun.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for all of those books. Those are all favorites. Go pick them up if you haven't read them and listen to our episodes afterwards.
Just a little shout out to some of our friends of the pod, just Fiction Fans Podcast, for coming on all the time and reading terrible books that we ask them to. We love you, Sarah and Lily. You're the best. Thanks to everyone for listening and supporting us. We really appreciate it. It's been a year, but the podcast has been a highlight for us both.
And Laura, I just want to like add a personal note. Thank you so much for doing this podcast with me for another year. I know that this started as me just kind of pestering you like, hey, we should do a podcast, and here's the name and here's this. And then we built up something that is very unique and very different than I think either one of us expected. And I know this year has been difficult for both of us in a plethora of ways. And like for people behind the scenes, it's been harder for me to dedicate as much time to this as I would like to, just through a lot of things of my, own life and stuff. But Laura has stepped up in ways that are both amazing, and just I'm so impressed and proud to be your friend every day, because I know everything that we've both gone through this year, and you've really stepped up and been an amazing rock for me. I appreciate you as a friend. I adore you. I think you're like one of the most impressive people, and I'm just honored that you would call me a friend. You're one of my favorite people.
Is really mushy.
It's the end of the year. We have to get a little bit mushy. So I just want to say like how much I appreciate all the work you've done this year, especially. So
it's a labor of love. I love working on this with you, and I'm excited to see what the next year brings. And Hannah gushes about me doing all this, but I couldn't do it without her. She has been literally my rock for years, and she's one of the few people in my life that makes me feel seen. So that is a rare friend to have, and I'm very, very lucky to have that in Hannah. So this is definitely a joy for the two of us to be able to work on this, and I'm really excited to see what happens next year.
Guys, join us next year as we dive into our first YA book of the series, Legendborn.
Yes.
Cannot wait. Can't wait to do this, and we just can't wait to see what next year brings. You know, it's forever changing. It's forever, we're
Yes.
looking into adding some more content for everyone, just more everything. So I think that that's something we're both looking forward to, and we're looking forward to finally diving into the Dresden file.
It's the year of the Dresden.
It's the year of the Dresden, everyone.
It's happening. I just want to mention
So
really quickly before we get off, I did not mention any of the books that are part of the Sphinx competition. I am part of team Before We Go blog with Beth Tabler, part of that judging team for the Sphinx, which is like a sister competition to Spiffbo, but it's novellas. And so many of those books were great, but because the competition is ongoing, I did not want to specifically mention any of the books that I read through that competition, but I would highly recommend go check out a bunch of those books because some of them were favorite reads for me this year.
Perfect. All right. Well, guys, we're going to sign off for the year, but join us next year. Keep an eye out for ourpod.com for our reading schedule and everything.
The year of the Dresden.
The year of the Dresden. And please make sure that you're always rating, reviewing, and subscribing, and joining us over on Patreon if you so choose. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.